All right, everybody, this is James. We're going to talk about some features in Total Office Manager that are related to managing multiple locations, multiple business locations. So for a moment, I'm going to assume that you have a business that has 2 or more locations. Maybe you have a main location, and possibly you have a satellite location on the east side of town, the west side of town, that type of thing. And possibly you're interested in Total Office Manager managing all those locations. One option you have, of course, is to install the software at each business location, and each location can have its own database and its own company file. Another option is for all of your locations to share the same company file and work in it simultaneously. Now, that would make the most sense if all of these locations are truly the same business. So if each location has its own federal identification number, meaning that they file their own tax return, that's a different discussion than we can have. But I'm basing this discussion on the idea that all of these locations are actually one business that file one tax return. So I'd like to show you some features in the software that would allow you to very effectively use this software using multiple business locations. One thing we would highly recommend is you consider our hosting option, where we host the entire application, the database, security, backups, database maintenance, etc. We host that. We take care of that. It's all out on the cloud, and you pay one fixed monthly fee, and everything's taken care of. You'll have an icon on your desktop, and you double-click it, and you'll launch the program, and you'll hardly be able to tell that you're in the hosted environment. It looks the same. It functions the same. It acts the same. In many ways, it performs even better because we're on very powerful servers. But be sure to talk to us about hosted, because I think that makes the process a lot easier. So if your company has multiple locations, the first thing that you want to do is establish DBAs, doing business as. And we have a DBA list that's unlimited. So here I'm in a company that I call Pro American Service, and we'll pretend as if we have an east location and a west location. And we could create a new one, a north location. So I'll type in a name for that new location, Pro American Services North. And I can put in our local license. If you have a local license or licenses, you can put them here. Website, email, contact name, address. I won't go through all those fields, but that would allow you to establish all of your various locations information. You could even change the logo. So rather than use your company's main logo, you could have a separate logo for each location, and we would do that here. So I'll click OK to make it easy and fast. Now we have 3 locations. Whenever you go to print something important, for example, maybe you're printing an invoice, you click Menu, Print Setup, and you have the option of changing the DBA here. And then you can establish that DBA as your default. For example, if you work on the east side location, then you would choose that. You would choose all your various settings, and then you would click this button, Save as My Preferences. And that way, whenever you go to print, you don't have to worry about making that selection. In fact, you could just print from a list. So you could come here and hit print or hit email, and it would remember those settings, and it would look as if it came from whatever location you picked. In fact, you don't even have to be at that location, of course. It could look as if it came from that location by picking a different DBA. So that way, as far as your clients are concerned, that invoice or other document came from that location. Each can have its own specific contact info. Now, it probably goes without saying, but as everybody works in this software, they're all in the same database. So whenever somebody does something at one location or in the field all over town using the mobile, the information is instantly available. There is no database synchronization, none of that business. You're not trying to interface with another program. This is not a bolt-on to anything. So as far as the software is concerned, all of you are sitting side by side right next to each other because you are all sharing the exact same database. All right, show you a couple other things. These are optional. What I showed you there is the bare minimum you can do, and that is probably enough for many, but I'll show you a few things that could be helpful. Our software is highly departmentalized, so you could create a department list that makes more sense for a company with multiple locations. Notice my example here of departments. I have a commercial department, I have a plumbing, I have a residential department. Inside my residential department or division, I'll call it a division, a commercial division, residential division. Within those divisions, I can have departments like indoor air quality, installation, new construction, warranty. Within commercial, I could do the same. But imagine I could create a new division, and I could call this West location if I wanted to. Why don't I spell that right? West location, there we go. And I'll give it an alias like West WLOC. That'll do it. Now, I can save this the way it is, and then I can open up my commercial division here and put the commercial division inside the West location. Oh, I got to fix that alias. Now I have a West location, and within it I have commercial, and it's a commercial division, and within it I have all of these different departments. And then I could do the same thing with residential. And I could keep going until I had all my locations, and each location had its own set of divisions and its own set of departments. And then you probably know where I'm going with this. Now, when the boss wants to print an income statement, they'll print an income statement by department, and they'll pick their division or location or department. But here, I'm interested in a location. When I print the West location, it'll print financials for just that location. And if I wanted to, of course, within that location, I could focus on a specific division or department. So I could hand the service manager an income statement for the West location service department. Or my commercial manager, I could hand him or her an income statement for the West location commercial division only. That's the only thing they would see. So that way you can departmentalize your financials, but even more than that, you can have financials by location. So the next step is setting up your departments so that they accurately reflect your various locations. Now, there's even more. We could stop there. I could say, hey, there you go. That's how great the software is for managing multiple locations. But there's a whole lot more, and I won't cover every single one of them, but there's a whole lot more little things that really help out. For example, let's go to our inventory features and take a look at warehouse assignment by user. Now, suppose each one of your locations has various warehouses, and your trucks are warehouses, aren't they? One thing you can do is you can assign warehouses to users. Now, why would you want to do this? There may be security concerns, but maybe not. maybe you just don't want Bart to be able to access the north location warehouse. Maybe you don't want him to just accidentally relieve inventory from a truck that doesn't belong to his location or a warehouse that doesn't belong to his location. Each of the users in this software can be assigned to their own set of warehouses. And obviously, you can assign a single warehouse to a single person. That way you could go into a service technician named Ashley and assign her only to her truck number 127. But this feature gives you the ability to decide who can access what warehouses. And if you didn't know it, Total Office Manager allows you to set up as many warehouses as you want, as many locations as you want, and allows you to relieve inventory from those various locations. And what's especially handy is relieving inventory from each one of your trucks and then having the software automatically reorder things for each truck. And it can do all that. But this feature right here is very handy for those of you that might have multiple business locations. I could talk more about that, but you probably get the idea. Let's go to one more thing, the schedule board. Our schedule board can also be segmented by business location. We have a very flexible feature called profiles. Profiles allow you to define the look of the schedule board and what you see on the schedule board. So for example, you could create a new profile called West Division, West Location. And within that, you could have additional profiles for that location. And that way, if you wanted to, you could only show technicians that belong to that location. If you have technicians that work at multiple locations, you can handle that too. You can decide what technicians belong to what profile. And another thing that's really cool is you can establish what divisions, what departments, what profit centers belong to what profile. So it'd be very easy for you to set up a profile that very much limits a CSR, a dispatcher, to only elements that are related to his or her location. Now, at any moment, they could switch to all locations or any location. So that way, the schedule board could be limited very closely to the location that that person works in. Now, finally, I'll say one last thing. In case you actually have multiple business entities, each has their own EIN number, each files their own tax return, right? You still could do the things we talked about because our software does allow you to consolidate financial statements from multiple company files. You could have multiple company files and you could print an income statement that consolidates two or more files together into one report. And that's beyond what I wanted to talk about, but it's pretty simple to do that. Now, there's other little things in the software, lots of little preferences, lots of security settings. There's things about mobile we could talk about that would help with all of this. But I wanted everybody to know that the software is very much geared to handling multiple business locations, I think more so than any program I've seen, especially any specialized software program like ours. I think we do a better job, or at least we do an excellent job of handling business locations. Did anyone have any questions about what we've talked about?
James, you're recording this, right? We could upload it to the YouTube. It's been a pretty good demonstration.
Just for confirmation, so I could have all of those different locations. Like, say, for example, I have a location, a west location, an east location, or even different states, right? And then I could run a report with like the commercial, like sales, like for the monthly sales from each commercial department from the different locations. Side by side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reports.
So the location could be across town. It could be in an entirely different state. And you would have reports by location, by division, by department.
Okay. It's good to know.
James?
Other questions?
I've got one.
Okay.
How and where can you set the DBA on an invoice? Would you be able to show me that real quick? Or is that possible?
Yes. No, we showed that earlier, in fact. Let's go back to that invoice. Menu. Print setup. And if you're new to Total Office Manager, there are a bunch of options, features regarding print options, and if that's not sufficient, you can even make your own. So you have the ability to go in and design your own work orders, your own statements, your own invoices, etc. But here's where you would select your DBA, and then you might want to save it as your default preference, and that way you'll never have to remember to do it again. When you right-click and hit print, it prints that way.
Okay.
And as far as the customer is
was
concerned, they will think it came from that location.
And then there's the department selector on the invoice too. I think you mentioned that. You'll pick your department, Missouri, and then you'll have your department, Kansas. You know, we divvy those up. And then on the invoice and on the work order, you can do department, Kansas, department, Missouri, and then you can do subs to those departments. So, here's the service department for Missouri. Here's the service department for Kansas. And when you create a customer, you can set its default department as well.
Well, I wasn't sure if you hadn't set the departments up per location, if there was a way to actually set that on the invoice. So, like, if you're not sending it to a client, you would have
it do it right there,
yeah. Purposes. But if you didn't set up the departments, I was saying just from the DBA, is there any way to do that on the invoice itself?
I don't think I understand the question.
So say you don't set your departments up with your locations. You just set the DBA up for different locations. Is there a way to define the DBA just on the invoice itself without going into the print option? So like say you're not actually going to print them or email them to a customer, you're just going to use it for internal purposes. Is there a way to define that on the invoice? I guess is what I'm asking.
Okay. That wouldn't be a good idea. So the DBA, the idea behind DBA is doing business as. So we are Pro-American Services, doing business as Pro-American Services Kansas Division. Or
so that's just to not confuse the customer. So they're like, they're always used to dealing with Missouri, like our Missouri side or whatever, and maybe it's a different name than our Kansas side. We don't want to accidentally send them the Kansas side because it could be a wholly different name.
Yes, and
remember,
and so the DBA is how your presentation looks. The department list is how the software separates all of your financials. And if you are new to Total Office Manager, as you may or may not know, we're very department-oriented. Everywhere, and I mean everywhere, you spend money, you have the option of deciding what location you're at. Payroll, bills, checks, recurring revenue. Even for you accounting people, you go in to make an adjusting journal entry. When you make an adjusting journal entry, you have the ability to decide what location it's for. The West location. Well, for what? Commercial work? What kind? Indoor air quality. So we are highly departmentalized. So by adding a location to the department list gives you complete segmentation of your dollars and cents.
You can even choose department per line item.
That's right.
On an invoice.
On an invoice, you can go so far, maybe you'd never need this, but what other software would offer it? on one invoice, one financial transaction, one adjusting journal entry, you could have a sale to the west location, east location, or any other location, division, or department. Line item
Yeah,
by
maybe
line item.
maybe our Kansas side does the service, and the Missouri side's the only one who knows how to do this kind of install. So why not? Now you're able to allocate who made what money.
That's right. If you're a mobile user, and like I said earlier, we could go on and on and on. This thing could be an hour and a half and still have stuff to say. If you're a mobile user, don't forget, you can put a sales lead in for a salesperson in the north location, west location, any location you want. So mobile would offer you the opportunity of putting in sales leads and other records for different locations. You could put in customers and assign them to different locations. As Jonathan mentioned a minute ago, when you put in a customer, you would have the ability to assign that customer to a default location and possibly a default division or department, if that made sense. Now, every time you use that customer, you don't have to remember. They're part of the western location. You don't have to think about it ever again.
And their tax information, too.
That's right.
Because I can think things could get a little hairy if the Kansas is going to go over to the Missouri. That's going to be different tax. Could be maybe, I don't know. But I just,
well,
there's the tax.
Look, we have that covered. That was an area that I thought I could talk about, but since we're in here, let's do it. You can have sales tax information for every single location. So each location can have its own sales tax code for very detailed reporting, and each one can have its own sales tax item with its own calculation rules. And in addition to that, you can even allocate payroll taxes based on the customer's location. So one problem you'd have with other software is you have payroll that could be very specific to the city, the state, the county.
Mm-hmm.
But we can handle that. If your division is down the road or halfway across the country, not a problem, because each customer can have its own payroll tax setup.
Nice, okay.
Other questions?
I think that's pretty much it. That was a good amount of coverage for the companies that do multiple states or multiple businesses.
Well, good. Yeah, I think that pretty well did it, and I appreciate you attending the training. Thank you.